think I've got the Honourable Ms Franks.
Thank you, Mr Acting President. I rise as one of two speakers today from the Greens to speak to the Retail Trading Bill 2021, also with a view to the fact that we have a referendum retail trading bill on our notice paper as well. I think it is no surprise that with 200 days before an election, we are here again in this council debating shop trading hours and Rob Lucas, the Treasurer's attempt to deregulate shop trading hours. It is something that the then Liberal opposition, the Marshall Liberal government, promised in the first 100 days to bring forward to this council a bill to deregulate shop trading hours. Of course, that was one of the promises that they broke pretty early because they didn't get a bill into this council in the first 100 days of this parliament. In fact, when asked why we had no piece of legislation to debate, it was said that Parliamentary Council hadn't been able to draft the bill because it was far more onerous than the Treasurer had imagined it might be. Of course, when we were finally, after that failed promise of a bill in the first 100 days, when we finally did receive a bill to debate shop trading hours, it was all or nothing, just as this bill is today. Not quite sure what was so complicated about that, but what I am cognisant of is that the Treasurer didn't put in time before the election to make sure he had a bill ready to go, that nobody was working all hours 24/7, day and night, to get that bill before us in that first 100 days, that we did not require of our staff here in the parliament, or indeed of our MPs, to sit additional days of parliament to get that bill debated, or at least onto the notice paper in that first 100 days. But what we do require in this particular bill is to give those who work in these industries affected less protections and less quality of life than they currently have, and less certainty with what they have to deal with. I'm proud that South Australia has one of the least duopoly-driven supermarket landscapes in the country. I'm proud that we have the small players who are able to get in and have a chance. I'm proud that those small players in particular drive the purchase of South Australian foods and products on our supermarket shelves, something that wouldn't happen if the duopoly and the big players got their way. And what we do know is that they would get their way if they were able to, and that is why they want these changes. What we do know is that while we're told that the small players won't be forced to open, and that is technically true, we know the reality of a competitive environment is that the big players will make them open or drive them into the ground. Now, I actually don't take this bill seriously. I've got to say, here we are, it is Groundhog Day. It is like a Looney Tunes cartoon. We've got, the sheepdog and the wolf clocking in and clocking off. That is what we are dealing with here. This is not a serious attempt at a piece of legislation. This is, from the Treasurer, an offer of all or nothing, full deregulation, take it or leave it, and take it to a referendum. Now, this is the new added extra to try and give it a little bit of newsworthiness, because, quite honestly, this story is grown old and tired in this parliament. We know what the numbers are at this point. We know that the Treasurer hasn't come and sat down with any of the key stakeholders and said, oh, perhaps we could look at tweaks around a Sunday or some public holidays or a Saturday going later. There's been none of those discussions. It's still this idea of all or nothing, deregulation, take it or leave it. And why does the Treasurer do that? And why does the Treasurer tack on a free gift with purchase of a referendum at the next state election? Well, that is to make it new and interesting and somehow campaignable on. This is actually just about the election that we have in 200 days. This is just an election stunt. This is nothing more than the Liberal Party, the Marshall government, but driven by their Liberal Party strategists, thinking that this is a great idea to take to the next election. They're not serious about reform here today. There are no amendments on the table to discuss areas that Business SA and other stakeholders have raised as possible points of compromise, which are well known now in the public debate to be areas that compromise could be reached within. That is not on the table for us today. What is on the table is yet another stunt bill. It is really actually ludicrous to expect the Legislative Council to take this piece of legislation seriously when it is presented in such a fashion. I do echo the Honourable Emily Burke's concerns and ask the question of the Treasurer: where is the actual public health advice that supported using the COVID pandemic and the declarations under the various acts, but including the Emergency Management Act and the Public Health Act in those early days, to extend shop trading hours? Where is that public health advice that was used by the Marshall government? I ask for that advice to be tabled with regards to the second reading response by the government today. I also note that the elevation of this matter to the terms of it facing a referendum of the South Australian people would be the first such referendum in some 30 years. I think it would be the first such referendum in my entire time of living in this state. I think it's extraordinary to treat the people of South Australia with such contempt that we need a referendum on this matter where it is put as an all-or-nothing proposition, no compromise entertained, and indeed no compromise attempted to be reached within the Parliament of the state before that is taken to a referendum. What I do reflect on is that the Treasurer will soon have all the time in the world to shop. I wish him well with his shopping. I don't think he's going to get much traction with this in the Council today, and I certainly don't think that this is the electoral winner that the Liberal Party thinks it is. When people understand the impact that this could have on small businesses, on those workers who currently have some certainty and some security about not being dragged into work at all times of the day and night, regardless of their caring obligations or their other life, or indeed, being able to play sport on the weekends and other parts of our community fabric. I think once you have those conversations with people, as the Honourable Emily Burke has noted, it doesn't take long. It takes a few minutes into a conversation about this issue where people move from wanting to shop to understanding what it is to work in these industries and what it is to treat those people with fairness and dignity while you still have your rights to shop and ability to shop. And I think currently we have the balance pretty well right. There are some areas of compromise on the table, and the Greens would consider some of those that have been put out there. I understand that the Labor opposition leader has publicly stated he'd be willing to have some conversations about compromise, and the member for Croydon was indeed, of course, part of a compromise deal previously reached with Business SA prior to his election to this parliament. So you would think that he probably is going to be up for having conversations in the future in his new now role as a member of this parliament. But the Treasurer isn't interested in those conversations. The Treasurer is interested in cynical political trickery. I don't propose to revisit the arguments that I've put to this chamber before, and I do refer those who are either avid readers of Hansard or following this debate today online to, I do refer to my previous remarks. This has been an issue, and I've noted this before, that does pique public interest. Everyone has an opinion. People are interested in this issue. I'll give you 10 out of 10 for political strategy there in terms of the Liberal Marshall government's thinking. However, once you have those conversations, people shift. And once you actually talk about sitting down and having a compromise, then maybe you actually might get the reform that some who you purport to represent seek. But right now you're not doing them any service at all by presenting an all-or-nothing argument. It's few and far between in terms of the lobby that does want full deregulation, Most lobbyists that come and meet with us, actually, they may be in strong support of reform, but they're also in strong support of that being reached by compromise and conversations, not presenting the parliament with these all-or-nothing bills and not taking these issues to a referendum. It's utterly a joke. It's contemptuous, really, of the time of this parliament and the people's lives who have been put in such levels of anxiety and uncertainty because of this ongoing Looney Tunes debate.
Yeah.